Materialization of what we are carrying becomes evident when we make connections. I knew that when Pastor Sam and I got married, that we were going to have children. But I had no idea what the children would look like. Did I? Pastor, you had a vision of what Grace and John would look like? You didn't know, right? Nobody knew what they would look like. I didn't know what their personality would be like. I didn't know what all their gifts and talents would be like, did I? I didn't know what their voices would sound like. When do I see what it is that God has designed and God has prepared for me? It's after the connection is made, right? So even though I'm carrying things, I really don't know the fullness of what I'm carrying. That's why some of us, we get prophetic words and we can't limit the prophetic words because what? The prophetic words happen, or they're going to happen in the context of connections, in the context of relationships. People are involved in our prophetic words. We like with this isolation by ourselves. And so we really don't know what it's going to look like until after the connection is made and it's become fruitful and it matures and produces the thing. So materialization of what we are carrying becomes evident when we make connections. There's some children, I'm talking as a teacher, who teachers have given up on and said they're slow. They can't do this, they can't graduate, they can't ever, whatever. There are children like that. Because all the teachers were looking at were what they could see with their eyes. They did not consider that these children were all carrying things that they themselves didn't even know God had put in them. But when that child made the right connection, then we were able to see the intelligence that God put in them. Then we were able to see the creativity that God put in them. Then we were able to see the determination and the tenacity. Before it seemed like he was an unmotivated child, not wanting to do anything, can't grasp anything. But all of a sudden, when the connection happens, we begin to see. It becomes evident what was inside of that person. I was sharing with, I think it was over dinner table and so we were talking, I was saying, different people brings out different things in you. Sometimes you don't know that something is in you. You say, I'm not like that man. No, that's not me. But then you connect with somebody who brings out something in you that you did not even know was there. Has anybody experienced that? It's good or bad. I'm not talking about bad things. It could be good things, it could be bad things. And that's what we're talking about tonight. This is why it's necessary for us to cherish and to nurture our relationships, because God has put people in our lives to bring out things that are needful for our success. Some of the things they're going to bring out are bad things. And they need to bring those bad things out so we can see them and do what? Cut them away from our lives, because if they stay in there, we don't know they're hidden in there. They might pop up at a time that is crucial to our success, and we're totally wiped out of the game. So God allows us to get into relationships that reveal things that we are carrying in us, things that need to be gotten rid of, and things that need to be developed and nurtured because we need them for our success, for the good works that He has brought us to. And so when we make connection, what is in us becomes evident through connections. What is in us becomes evident through connections. What is in us becomes evident through connections. Those connections can be physical connections, like marital connections, or parent-child connections, or business connections. But they can also be spiritual connections. They can also be spiritual connections. When you hook up with a certain spiritual leader, when you hook up with a certain pastor, when you hook up with a certain church, there are things that that relationship, that connection brings out that you did not know was even there, both good and bad. All right. This is why we cannot always curse relationships that show us our ugly selves. I'm going to say it again. We cannot curse relationships that show us our ugly selves, because that is one of the purposes of the connection, to cause us to see what we're carrying down on the inside of us. Because you know, God put some things in us. How many of us know that we live in a sinful world? And our forefathers dabbled in some things that they should not have. And then so there's some families that are walking with things generationally that they should not be walking with. Yeah? And when you make certain connections, you have an opportunity to see those things, identify those things, and get rid of those things so that we can do the good works that God has prepared for us to do. Those connections are needed so that we can see the unfolding of that which God has prepared in advance for us to do. This is why we have to invest in our relationships. This is why we have to invest in our connections. This is why we have to invest in our touching one another. And I'm going to go into touching one another, but I'm going to give one more example. It's another one of these scientific, biological examples. Amen. But just follow. My mother was born with the sickle cell disease. She did not know this. Had 3 children and still did not know. She found it out when she was pregnant with me that she had the sickle cell disease. Okay. Her not knowing she had the sickle cell disease did not change the fact that she had the sickle cell disease. Her body was succumbing to the symptoms and the crises just the same whether she had knowledge of it or not. She did not know she had the disease, and because she was a carrier of the disease, she passed it on to one of her children. She had 3 biological children. She passed it on to me. I am a carrier of the disease. I have 3 biological children, and I passed it on to one of my children. Seppi has the trait as well. So I have the disease, I have the trait, Seppi has the trait, mommy has the disease. But listen here, the reason I have the trait is because of the connection she made. If she made another connection, I could have had the disease. What am I talking about? If she connected with somebody who had the disease, I would have had the disease. But because she connected with a man who did not have the disease, nor the trait, I only got the trait. Yes? What am I saying? When we connect, we have to connect with intent. Because who you connect with is going to determine the expressions and the characteristics of what you're carrying or what you pass on. What you bring forward. Thank you, Pastor. That is even simpler. Who you connect with is going to determine what you bring forward. And next week, we're going to talk about touching each other, but we're going to talk about relationships with unbelievers and what those interactions should look like. Because who you connect with determines what you bring forth. You can't say after you already connect, oops, I didn't expect that. Oops, I didn't want that. Once you connect with the individual, whatever they're carrying, and you have something that is the next half of that, or like that, or goes with that, it is going to connect. That's why people in church who have a spirit of lust, when they connect with another person in the church who have a spirit of lust, watch out. We will have problems. because it's not just a trait. It's a full-blown disease going to happen. But if a person with a spirit of lust connects with somebody who does not have that spirit of lust, that connection is not going to stir up or cause any fruit to come out. No lust fruit is going to come out. So we have to be careful when we're talking about touching and connecting with intent. We have to be careful how we connect. All right, we're running off. Our connections must be meaningful and intentional. They must be what? Meaningful and intentional. We're going to get to the scriptures soon. I'm just laying this when we get to the scriptures. We tie it in. Our connections must be meaningful and intentional. Our connections must involve touch. It is not until we touch each other that we can extract that which is needed for the materialization of what God has prepared for us to do beforehand. I cannot keep myself away from people and expect to give birth to the things that God, the good works. It's not going to happen. I have to connect. I have to touch. It is in my touching and my connecting that I'm going to receive what is needed to be able to complete the good works that I have been prepared for beforehand. That's where we got that phrase. Proximity is not the same as connectivity. In church, and I'm talking about church because it's church folks we're talking to, we have a lot of proximity. A lot of church people would say, I've heard a lot of church people say, me don't want my church people to be my friend. Have you heard that, Pastor Dan? I don't want a friend in church because church people dangerous. People say that. Church people bad. They kick from all of them. I don't want nothing to do with them. I hear people saying so. But you know what? You're church people too. No? So that means you're dangerous. It means you're bad. And this is what we have a lot of in church. We have proximity. People are sitting next to each other in church. People are working next to each other in church. And I'm just using church for now. We're going to move over to the other ones. Yes? We are the worship team together. We in the ushers board together, the deacon board. We in the women's band together. But no connection is taking place. And so no fruit, no good works. The church doesn't grow as a result of your department because all we have is proximity. We are in the same space next to each other, but we are not touching each other. We are not connecting each other. I am not seeing Grace on the worship team as a carrier. And so I need to connect with her because she has something that I need to make me a better worship singer, vice versa. Huh? On the transportation board, I'm not seeing Donnie as being a carrier. And so there's something that he has that I need for us to produce whatever the good works are in the transportation department. Same thing in families. Grace, I'm going to use Grace, and whether she minds or not, I'm using her. She's doing much better now. But one of the things that Pastor Tad will talk about her and say to her is that she keeps locking up herself in the bedroom away from the family. She's experiencing proximity. She's in the same house and the same space, but she's not allowing connections to take place. I'm just paraphrasing what he was saying. Basically, she's not allowing us to touch her and her to touch us. And if we don't touch each other, the good works that should come from our relationship are not going to come. So something that God intended for her being part of this family to produce in the earth will not be produced because she is isolating herself from the family. She is near us, proximity, but she is not touching us, and she's not allowing us to touch her. And this is the same case. It happens with parents. As children get older and they get to that teenage years, we have to be so careful because parents, we can't just allow them to go off in isolation because they were given to the family because the family has some good works that God has prepared beforehand to be produced in the earth. And the reason why he has given each other in the family is because everybody has something that needs to be contributed. And if they go off in isolation, if they go off into, I only eat, I get my food and I go up to my room, the connections, the touching that needs to take place for whatever to be produced is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I think Pastor Tad had said to her one time, correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor Tad, that John has gotten more from me and him for his life than she has, and she's older than John. Because John is always trying to make connection, he's always trying to touch. He's always, it's not enough for him to be near or close to. He wants to also touch, want to connect. And that's how things are imparted. And we run on. All right, we're coming down. Touching each other. So proximity is not the same as connectivity. It is not enough to be near each other. We must come into contact with each other. We must become linked and involved with each other. Now, this is going to call for some level of intimacy, and that is why when we talk about, next week when we talk about touching each other in terms of relationships with unbelievers, because there are relationships that we have with unbelievers. Our work relationships are relationships with unbelievers. When we say relationships, we're not talking about only deep relationships. We're talking about connections. The connections, people that God has linked you to in life for the purposes of the good works he wants you to do. And some of those people he has linked us to are unsaved people. God linked Daniel to Darius. He linked Daniel to Cyrus. He linked Joseph to Pharaoh. Because these people were necessary for the good works, for the assignments and the purposes that we were called to do. And so there are relationships that we will have with unbelievers where there needs to be not just proximity, but connectivity. But then we want to talk about how that looks. How would those interactions look? Where do we draw the line? What are the boundaries? Because those would look different than it would look with a born-again believer. Yeah? All right. So it is not, so it's going to call for some level of intimacy, some level of connectivity. This is where we're going to speak about the interactions. But for now, tonight, we're going to close with our scriptures, and we're going to be talking about touching each other using scriptures. If you permit me, I have some more time. Good. Touching each other. Let's start with agreement. We're going to do a very